Hey there everyone, what's up? Back today with another impressions video, and today I'm going to be talking about Kamen Rider, Batt Ride War. And Kamen Rider, Batt Ride War is pretty interesting actually. It's a, I don't know, Dynasty Warriors clone, but with Kamen Rider. So, so first, I'm sure everybody knows what Kamen Rider is, but if not, it's kind of a Japanese tokusatsu TV show for, imagine like Power Rangers, but with motorcycles and different kinds of enemies. But that's, yeah, that's a basic, basic, not even 100% correct explanation of Kamen Rider. But it was on TV in the US, so if you were in the US and you heard of Masked Rider, you probably have heard of Kamen Rider. But anyway, Kamen Rider Batt Ride War is, how can I explain it? Yeah, just like Dynasty Warriors, in a sense, you have a lot of maps. You go from there's not a ton of maps actually. There's probably about 10 different maps, I'd say. There might be more, but it seems like there's not that many. And you'll run around the maps and you'll go and fight huge hordes of enemies, hundreds of enemies at a time maybe, and you fight enough of them and a boss will appear, and you fight the boss and maybe another boss will appear on the other side of the map, or more enemies will appear. You'll have to destroy barriers or guards or something. It's a standard kind of setup for this kind of game. If you've played any of the Dynasty Warriors games, if you've played the Fist of the North Star game, they're pretty similar. The gameplay style, the types of missions you do, it's pretty standard stuff for this type of game. So you're probably saying, why should I play Kamen Rider Batt Ride War if it's just the same as all these other games? Well, it's a good question actually, because it's pretty similar to all these other types of games, but it has Kamen Riders from... It's got about 35 different Kamen Riders, I'd say, plus like other ones you can't use. So it's pretty interesting if you're a fan of Kamen Rider. It's also got a pretty good fighting system built into it. It's a little different from your standard Dynasty Warriors thing. You can play it that way. If you just want to like kind of mash the button, you probably can, and it'd be fine. But it does have a more of a kind of 3D fighter type feel to it, because some of the characters do have a lot of moves, a lot of specials they can do through various button inputs, and you can make these ridiculous combos. Like, I'm not, I've like had combos way in the like 900s, and so you can just make these kind of amazing combos until like the enemies run out, or you get hit when your combo gets broken. But it's pretty interesting that like, there's about 35 different Kamen Riders, and they all have their own fighting style and move sets. So most of them are not similar. So sometimes you'll find, I found a lot of Kamen Riders that I wasn't good with. Like I couldn't, get the hang of their fighting style to make long combos. And some of them were strong but had a low hit count. So leveling up with them was a little difficult. But anyway, let me backtrack a little and talk about the game itself. So first, you start off as Kamen Rider Wizard. I think he's the newest Kamen Rider. There might be another one by this time, but I think Wizard is the latest. And Kamen Rider Wizard is the big guy right here, this guy. And you start out as him, and the story for this game is not unlike all of the other Kamen Rider games, or the other types of games where like these types of characters are all suddenly together for some bizarre reason. And generally they've lost their memory, and they've lost their powers, and they have to regain them by fighting, or regain them by unlocking their memories. And that's the basic setup for pretty much all of those games. It's the same setup for Lost Heroes. It's like the same setup for Battle Dodgeball 3. Like, it's the same setup for Great Battle Full Blast. They all have that setup. the details of the story, like who did it to them and why, is always different. But the general idea is seemingly the same in all of these games. So if you've played them before, you kind of know what you're in for the story. It's not a bad story, but it's formulaic in that sense. But if you're a fan of Kamen Rider, you'll like it. It's got a lot of it uses the original voice actors. It's got a lot to choose from, so you can pretty much choose whatever rider you like. Well, I mean, not any rider, but any rider from the past um, 15 years or so. So there are a lot of riders though, and the game doesn't it doesn't like skimp with the riders, but it also makes you use all of them at least once. So you get a good feel for how each of them works, and you can kind of pick which one you like. And you can pick them either by I just like this rider, or I like this one's fighting style, or I like this one's crowd clearing special attacks, or whatever. It's really up to you at that point. But in my case, I just kind of picked riders that I thought looked cool because I'm not very like deep into Kamen Rider, so I don't know a lot about it. So I just picked like, well, this guy had some cool moves, or this guy looks cool, or that's pretty much how I picked it up. So I started with Wizard because you have to, and then I moved to Kamen Rider Agito, and then lastly I moved to Kamen Rider Decade, who was pretty much the Kamen Rider I used for the rest of the game at that point. So, but I did have to use all of them. So I used, all the different riders to test out their fighting styles, and some were good, and some were was not able to use. Actually, I'm trying to remember his name. Kamen Rider Meteor, maybe. I really like the way he looks, and I was like, oh, I want to use him. But his fighting style was like this crazy kung fu that I couldn't work into combos. And I'm talking about combos a lot because it's important for the gameplay. You don't get experience. All the riders can level up, and they level up to get more abilities and more. And with that same experience, you can kind of buy upgrades for all the riders. And what happens is you don't get those points unless you do combos. So if you make a combo over 100, you'll start getting experience. But if you don't get over 100, you get no experience. So you can actually go through entire stages without getting like almost any experience from all of the enemies that you kill, which it's kind of it's kind of a bummer if you know what I mean. Like you play through the entire stage and you have like I got 80 experience when I usually get like 10,000. So it's kind of that happens. And it's even more likely to happen if you play on the higher difficulties. So it's a game that's meant to be played through with certain characters on normal difficulty, and then once you're leveled up, you should play through again on the higher difficulty to not only get a higher stage ranking, but also to get more experience to become more powerful. So it's one of those types of games where it's meant to be played multiple times and with multiple characters, like Dynasty Warriors. If you like Dynasty Warriors, it's a game that has hundreds and hundreds of hours of gameplay in it, because playing with one character is totally different than playing with another character, even if the stages are the same. So this game kind of takes a page from that book. And if you wanted to level up all the characters and beat every stage on the highest difficulty with every character, you'd have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of gameplay. I think it took me about 20 hours or so to beat the whole game, like all the stages, with a satisfactory clear ranking. Satisfactory for me, which is like A or above. I didn't go for S on everything. But you could go through and try to get like the higher rankings on everything. I just didn't feel that much. But it's the kind of game that, like, if you like these kind of 3D large scale beat 'em ups, like like 99 Nights, or of course Dynasty Warriors, or even that Fist of the North Star game is probably close to this. You'll probably like this one. There are some other things that aren't in those other types of games, namely motorcycles. So there are motorcycles, and the motorcycles are, I want to say they're like horses in Dynasty Warriors in the sense that like they don't do much. Uh, like you can ride them, you can get on them and ride around the stages, but they don't do much. So if you try to, you can't run down enemies on the motorcycle, for example. Like the enemies all jump out of the way of the motorcycle, no matter how fast you're going or how many you're going through. They all jump out of the way. So you can't run down enemies with the motorcycle. And if you hit something with a motorcycle, it just bounces off. There's no effect. You don't crash. You don't take damage. You just bounce. So it's not like an incredibly realistic motorcycle usage. The motorcycles, you could almost not use them for everything but the final parts of each stage where you have to escape because there's a time limit that's usually short. But other than that, you could just run through these stages and not use the motorcycle. So it's kind of a missed opportunity there. Like they could have added in some cool like motorcycle battle scenes or something. That would have been made it a little better, I think. But you do. There are some things you can do with the motorcycle. There are like jumps throughout the stages, and if you have the motorcycle and you make the jump, there's usually like a kind of bonus experience point in there. So even if you aren't good at combos and you're good at driving, you can hop on the motorcycle and do the stunt jumps during the stage to get some experience. And a lot of times the experience from those motorcycle jumps is pretty high. You get like 1,000 points for just doing one of them, and there's usually like 5 or 6 in each stage, so you could get a big chunk of experience from just doing motorcycle stuff. Um, but beyond that, they're kind of, I feel they're kind of like a wasted. Like in some games with Kamen Rider, like, uh, what's it called? Great Battle Full Blast, for example. There are motorcycle stages with Kamen Rider where you'll drive through and you have to avoid obstacles and fight enemies and stuff. They should have done something like that with this game. It would have been pretty interesting, but maybe there'll be a sequel and they'll add that. But what else did I want to talk about? Oh yeah, there are different stages to the game. So there is this main story mode, and then there's this kind of like the Rider's Road or something it was called. I'm not exactly sure. It's something like that. Something like that, though. Rider's Road or something, where it's like these kind of challenge missions where you'll go through 3 levels with certain conditions attached to you. So they're kind of it's like an extra mode in the game where you can go through and you know fight different things on different stages than the main story. So it does add a bit more to the game, and those challenge missions are actually a bit harder than almost anything in the story. So it does add that kind of challenge in there that you sometimes might feel is missing from the main story. The bosses and stuff in the game aren't incredibly difficult. Like sometimes you'll find places where you'll feel like it's a little hard, but for the most part, it's pretty easy to get through things. But again, if you feel the game is too easy, you can just bump up the difficulty level, and then you'll understand that it's not so easy. So depending on the and I played through the entire game on the normal difficulty level, and it's pretty easy on normal. So none of the bosses really gave me any trouble on normal. But once you bump up the difficulty level and you start playing again, you start to see why it's more difficult. The enemies do more damage, and they attack more often. So it makes you have to really think about blocking and doing combos and getting everything going correctly, which if you're not into that kind of thing, you just want to beat up 100 guys in a couple seconds, like normal is fine. Just run through and smash people up, and it would be fine. If you're really into getting more combos and getting more in depth with the fighting, put it to a higher difficulty. So yeah, that's pretty much it for Kamen Rider Batt Ride War. Overall, I'd say it's fun. I liked it. I didn't. It's the kind of thing where like it's not a super great game. Like the story isn't like anything to talk about really. It's not like something amazing. It's passable, and it's a Kamen Rider story. I mean, it's kind of what you'd expect. And the gameplay is good. It's not perfect, but it's got some, good parts. But sometimes I feel like playing this kind of game. I played this, and last one I played before it was like Warriors Orochi, and then before that I played that Fist of the North Star game. So like maybe like once a year or something, I get the feeling like, oh, I just want to play a Dynasty Warriors type game and mindlessly beat up enemies. And this year, that game was Kamen Rider Batt Ride War, and I'm not disappointed with it. If you have that same kind of itch that I do every once in a while, like you just want to play a Dynasty Warriors type game, I guess you could buy Dynasty Warriors that actually comes out every year. But if you're tired of the same old with the settings and things, Kamen Rider Batt Ride War is perfectly good for that. Put it in, enjoy. It's you know, pretty good in terms of your 3D open world beat 'em up type things. I mean, it's not open really, you're just on a map, but you know what I mean. That same kind of large scale, large army beat 'em up type things. So yeah, that'll be it. I'll see you guys next time.